Michael Jackson had kept the secret for months, only telling his closest confidants that someone extraordinary would join him during his Victory Tour finale. When the mystery guest finally appeared at Madison Square Garden on December 9, 1984, it created one of the most surprising and emotionally charged moments in entertainment history, revealing a hidden chapter of Michael's life that explained the true source of his perfectionism and artistry. For 3 months leading up to the Victory Tour's final show, Michael Jackson had been acting differently. It wasn't just the usual pre-show nerves that came with performing at Madison Square Garden. This was something else entirely. During rehearsals at the Havenhurst family compound, Michael would pull aside his brothers Jermaine, Randy, and Tito with an unusual gleam in his eyes. "Someone very important is going to join us for the finale," Michael would say, his voice barely containing excitement. "Someone who changed everything for me." But whenever pressed for details, he would simply smile mysteriously and walk away, leaving his brothers more curious than ever. The speculation among the Victory Tour crew became a daily obsession. Greg Phillinganes, the tour's musical director, was convinced it had to be Diana Ross Michaels, longtime mentor and friend, who had discovered the Jackson 5. Security Chief Bill Bray thought it might be Quincy Jones, fresh off their Thriller collaboration that had made Michael the biggest star on the planet. "Mike's been making secret phone calls," observed Jackie Jackson during a family dinner in November. "He disappears for hours, comes back looking emotional, won't tell anybody where he's been." Even Katherine Jackson, Michael's mother who knew her son better than anyone, was kept in the dark. "He just keeps saying it's someone who taught him things no one else could," she confided to family friend Suzanne de Passe, "someone who made him who he is today." What made this secrecy even more unusual was how nervous Michael seemed about it. This was the same performer who could command any stage, who had just moonwalked his way into history on Motown 25. Yet something about this mystery guest was making the king of pop genuinely anxious. As December 9th approached, the anticipation reached fever pitch. Madison Square Garden had sold out in minutes, with 25,000 fans expecting the spectacle of a lifetime. Little did they know they were about to witness something far more intimate and profound than any choreographed performance. December 9th, 1984. Madison Square Garden was electric with anticipation as 25,000 fans packed into the legendary venue for the Victory Tour finale. The audience expected nothing less than Michael Jackson at his absolute peak, fresh off Thriller's historic success, riding the wave of global superstardom that had made him the most famous entertainer on earth. Michael didn't disappoint. From the opening notes, he delivered pure magic. The signature dance moves that had captivated the world flowed seamlessly from one song to the next. When he glided backwards across the stage, in his gravity-defying moonwalk, the crowd erupted as if witnessing a miracle. Every spin, every kick, every gesture was performed with the precision that had made him legendary. For 90 minutes, Michael Jackson was everything his fans had come to expect: dynamic, electrifying, untouchable. The energy in the arena was intoxicating, with fans singing along to every word, their voices creating a wall of sound that seemed to lift the roof off Madison Square Garden. But then, something shifted. Midway through what should have been the final stretch of songs, Michael suddenly stopped. The music cut out. The dancers froze. In the sudden silence, you could hear the collective intake of breath from 25,000 people. "Ladies and gentlemen," Michael said, walking slowly to the front of the stage. His voice was different now, softer, more intimate than the commanding presence he'd maintained all evening. "Tonight is going to be very special for me, and I hope for all of you too." The crowd buzzed with curiosity. Michael had surprised audiences before, but something about his demeanor suggested this was different. There was vulnerability in his voice that rarely surfaced during performances. "I have someone backstage who means more to me than any record producer," Michael continued, his words measured and deliberate. more important than any choreographer, any executive, any person in the music business. He paused, clearly gathering his emotions. This person shaped not just how I move, but how I think about performance, about connecting with all of you. The arena fell silent again. Michael Jackson, the most confident performer of his generation, seemed genuinely nervous about what came next. He walked to the side of the stage, took a deep breath, and prepared to share a secret he'd been carrying for over a decade. "Ladies and gentlemen," Michael said, his voice thick with emotion, "please welcome someone who changed my life forever, Mrs. Catherine Washington." The name meant nothing to the 25,000 people in Madison Square Garden. A polite but puzzled applause rippled through the arena as a small, elegant African-American woman slowly walked onto the stage. She appeared to be in her mid-60s, dressed in a simple but dignified navy blue dress, moving with the careful grace of someone who had spent a lifetime teaching others how to move. This wasn't Diana Ross. This wasn't Quincy Jones. This wasn't any celebrity the audience recognized. The confusion was palpable. Who was this woman? And why had Michael Jackson, the king of pop, stopped his sold-out show to bring her on stage? But if you watched Michael's face, everything became clear. The moment Mrs. Washington appeared, his entire demeanor transformed. The global superstar who commanded stages around the world approached this elderly woman with the reverence of a student greeting a beloved teacher. He gently took her arm, guiding her to center stage with a tenderness that spoke of deep respect and genuine love. "Thank you for being here tonight, Mrs. Washington," Michael said into his microphone, his voice carrying a warmth that reached every corner of the massive arena. Mrs. Washington smiled nervously at the sea of faces before her. Despite her obvious stage fright, she carried herself with a dignity that commanded attention. When she spoke, her voice was soft but clear, somehow carrying throughout the venue without amplification. "Thank you for having me, Michael," she said simply. "I'm proud to be here." The audience was beginning to sense they were witnessing something extraordinary, even if they didn't yet understand what it was. Michael Jackson, who could have anyone in the world join him on stage, had chosen this unknown woman. The respect in his gesture, the emotion in his voice, the way he positioned himself slightly behind her, all of it suggested they were about to learn something profound about the man behind the legend. Michael turned to face the crowd, Mrs. Washington beside him, and prepared to tell a story that would forever change how the world understood the source of his artistry. "I need to tell you all a story," Michael began, his voice carrying across the silent arena. "When I was 8 years old, the Jackson 5 had just signed with Motown, and everything was happening so fast. The recording sessions, the performances, the pressure to be perfect. It was overwhelming for a little kid." The audience listened intently, many hearing this level of personal detail from Michael for the first time. "My father, Joe, realized I needed help with more than just singing," Michael continued. "The dancing, the stage presence, the way to connect with people, I was just copying what I saw on TV. So he found Mrs. Washington, who had been teaching dance privately in Gary, Indiana, and later in Los Angeles." Michael turned to look at Mrs. Washington with obvious affection. "For 8 years, from when I was 8 until I was 16, Mrs. Washington came to our house 3 times a week. Not to the studio, not to public rehearsals, to our home, where no cameras could see, where no reporters could watch." The revelation was stunning. During the height of Jackson 5 mania, while Michael was becoming a global sensation, he had been quietly studying with a private teacher the world knew nothing about. "Mrs. Washington didn't just teach me steps," Michael explained. "She taught me how to feel music in my body, how to let emotion flow through movement. She showed me that dancing wasn't just about being technically perfect. It was about telling a story, about making people feel something real." Mrs. Washington nodded gently, her eyes glistening with pride as Michael shared their secret history. Everything you've seen me do on stage. The way I move, the way I connect with all of you. It started in our living room with Mrs. Washington teaching me that performance is about giving your heart to the audience. Michael's voice grew stronger, more confident. She never asked for credit, never wanted recognition. She just wanted to help a young boy learn how to share his gift with the world. The audience was beginning to understand the magnitude of what they were witnessing, the hidden foundation of Michael Jackson's legendary artistry. Mrs. Washington, Michael said, turning to his former teacher with a smile, would you show these wonderful people what you taught me? What happened next was pure magic. Mrs. Washington stepped forward, and despite her age and obvious nervousness, something extraordinary occurred. Without any music, she began to move. It wasn't flashy. There were no spins, no dramatic leaps, no show-stopping tricks. Instead, Mrs. Washington demonstrated something far more profound, the art of movement that comes from the soul. Her gestures flowed with a grace that spoke of decades spent understanding how the human body could express emotion. Every subtle step, every gentle sway, every precise hand movement contained a lifetime of wisdom about performance. The audience watched in mesmerized silence as they witnessed the source code of Michael Jackson's artistry in Mrs. Washington's movements. They could see the foundation of everything that had made Michael legendary, the way he could make a simple gesture speak volumes, the precision that looked effortless but required perfect control, the ability to convey deep emotion through pure physical expression. Then Michael joined her, but not as the global superstar commanding his stage. He moved beside Mrs. Washington as a student, following her lead, mirroring her movements with the respect and attention of someone still learning from a master teacher. The role reversal was stunning, the king of pop deferring to this unknown woman, showing the world where his genius had truly originated. As they moved together, the audience began to understand something profound. This wasn't just a dance demonstration, it was a masterclass in the difference between technique and soul. Mrs. Washington moved with the authority of someone who understood that true artistry came not from perfection, but from authenticity. She was showing 25,000 people that behind every spectacular performance was the foundational truth that movement must come from the heart. The connection between teacher and student was visible in every synchronized step. Michael's famous precision, his ability to make complex choreography look natural, his gift for making audiences feel every emotion, it all traced back to this moment, to this woman who had taught him that dancing was a conversation between performer and audience. When they finished, the arena erupted in applause. But it was different from the screaming adoration Michael usually received. This was deeper respect, recognition, and genuine awe at witnessing the hidden roots of greatness. Michael turned to Mrs. Washington, his eyes bright with emotion, ready to share even more of what she had given him. Mrs. Washington, Michael said, his voice filled with wonder, I need to tell everyone something that I just discovered 6 months ago. He turned to address the audience, shaking his head in amazement. This incredible woman has been coming to my concerts for years, buying her own tickets, sitting with everyone else, never once telling anyone who she was or asking for special treatment. The audience gasped. Mrs. Washington had been hiding in plain sight, watching her former students rise to superstardom from anonymous seats in venues around the country. I only found out by accident, Michael continued. A fan sent me a photo from a show in Chicago last year, and there in the background, I saw Mrs. Washington sitting in the regular seats. I couldn't believe it. His voice broke slightly. When I asked her about it later, she said she just wanted to see how I was doing, to make sure I was still dancing from my heart like she taught me. Mrs. Washington smiled softly, clearly moved by Michael's words, but maintaining her dignified composure. But here's what Mrs. Washington doesn't know I'm about to share, Michael said, looking directly at his former teacher. For the past 12 years, ever since I could afford to, I've been sending money to help with her grandchildren's college education. I've been paying for her medical expenses, helping with her family's needs, all done quietly, because that's what you do for the people who shaped your life." The revelation hit the audience like a thunderbolt. Mrs. Washington's eyes widened in surprise. Clearly, she had never known the source of the anonymous financial support that had helped her family through difficult times. "Mrs. Washington taught me that true artistry comes from giving," Michael explained. "She gave me everything she knew about movement, about connecting with people, about performing with soul. She never asked for anything in return, never wanted credit. But she gave me the foundation for everything I've been able to accomplish." The arena was completely silent now. 25,000 people witnessing something far more profound than a concert. They were seeing the private character of a global icon, understanding that his generosity was as legendary as his talent. "That's why tonight is so important to me," Michael said. "Mrs. Washington deserves to be recognized for what she gave to the world through me." The significance of what was happening at Madison Square Garden that night extended far beyond entertainment. In 1984, America was still grappling with racial tensions, and here was Michael Jackson, the biggest star in the world, publicly crediting an African-American woman as the foundation of his artistry. The cultural weight of this moment was not lost on the diverse audience watching. What Michael did that night was revolutionary. Music journalist Nelson George would later write, "He wasn't just acknowledging a teacher, he was publicly honoring the black roots of his art, at a time when many artists were reluctant to discuss such influences." The immediate response from the Madison Square Garden audience was electric. People weren't just applauding a performance anymore, they were witnessing a moment of profound cultural significance. African American audience members felt a particular pride seeing Mrs. Washington honored on one of the world's biggest stages, while others gained new understanding of the deep cultural exchanges that create great art. In the days following the concert, media attention focused intensely on Mrs. Washington. Reporters camped outside her modest Los Angeles home, eager for interviews and deeper stories. But Michael had anticipated this and immediately arranged for private security and legal protection to ensure his former teacher wasn't overwhelmed or exploited. "Mrs. Washington is not a public figure," Michael told his management team firmly. "She's a private person who deserves respect and protection. Any interviews or appearances will be her choice, done on her terms." Mrs. Washington handled the sudden attention with the same grace she had shown on stage. She granted only a handful of carefully selected interviews, always emphasizing Michael's character and talent, rather than seeking spotlight for herself. "Michael was always a special child," she told Ebony magazine in her most extensive interview. "Not because of his talent, but because of his heart. That's what made him extraordinary." The moment also marked a turning point for Michael himself. Previously reluctant to discuss his artistic influences in detail, he began speaking more openly about the African American musicians, dancers, and teachers who had shaped him. Mrs. Washington had given him permission to acknowledge his roots publicly, showing him that honoring his influences was a form of respect, not exploitation. This single evening had transformed from a concert into a cultural milestone, setting the stage for how this moment would be remembered and celebrated for decades to come. After that transformative night at Madison Square Garden, Mrs. Washington's life changed, but in ways that honored her dignity and privacy. Michael ensured she was incorporated into his public life thoughtfully and appropriately. She was given a permanent seat at his special performances, not as a spectacle, but as an honored guest. When Michael performed at award shows or charity events, Mrs. Washington would often be quietly present in the VIP section, watching her former student with the pride of a teacher whose lessons had reached the world. 6 months after the Madison Square Garden moment, Michael established the Catherine Washington Foundation for Dance Education. providing scholarships for young dancers from underprivileged backgrounds. The foundation focused particularly on teaching the emotional and spiritual aspects of dance that Mrs. Washington had emphasized the difference between mere technique and true artistic expression. Michael wanted to make sure Mrs. Washington's approach to teaching lived on, explained Foundation Director Susan Chen. It wasn't just about funding dance lessons. It was about finding teachers who understood that movement comes from the soul. Mrs. Washington remained involved with Michael's career until her passing in 1995. She attended his wedding to Lisa Marie Presley, was present for the filming of several music videos, and continued to offer quiet guidance when Michael faced personal challenges. Their relationship had evolved from teacher-student to something approaching family. The impact of that December night extended far beyond their personal relationship. Michael's public acknowledgement of Mrs. Washington influenced his approach to mentorship and charity for the rest of his career. He became more open about crediting his influences and more intentional about supporting arts education, particularly programs that emphasized the cultural roots of popular music and dance. That moment taught Michael the power of public gratitude, observed longtime friend Quincy Jones. He realized that acknowledging the people who shaped you isn't just good manners, it's a way of preserving important knowledge and honoring the chain of influence that creates all great art. The story of Michael Jackson and Mrs. Catherine Washington reminds us that behind every extraordinary talent are teachers, mentors, and influences who shaped that gift. It shows us the transformative power of recognizing those contributions publicly and the importance of ensuring that wisdom passes from one generation to the next. Most importantly, it demonstrates that true greatness lies not just in achieving success, but in remembering and honoring those who made that success possible. Mrs. Washington didn't need to be famous, but she deserved to be acknowledged, and Michael's recognition of her contribution became one of the most meaningful gifts he ever gave. If this story of mentorship, gratitude, and hidden influences moved you, make sure to subscribe and share this video with someone who has been an important teacher or mentor in your life. Who taught you something that changed everything? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that notification bell for more incredible true stories about the relationships that shape our greatest artists.